We have made it to Jacksonville, Florida. We jumped in the Pacific Ocean when we were in San Diego, so now it's time to jump in the Atlantic.
We're Jess and Miles. In 2019, we quit our jobs to pursue a dream of long-term travel around the world. When COVID brought us home back in March, we decided to explore some of our own backyard here in the United States. Sadly, our road trip is now coming to an end, but not before we get to explore parts of the famous Route 66 while making the 1,500-mile drive back home. I cannot believe it is already time to head home. We've been on the road for a little over 4 months at this point, or to be more specific, it has been 132 days since we left in July. So far, we have driven somewhere around 14,000 miles through 15 different states. We have stayed in 31 different towns, visited 10 national parks, and hiked nearly 400 miles. We still have over 1,500 miles left on our road trip, and by the time we are done, we will have driven through 20 of the 50 states.
So the last time you guys saw us, we were actually in Northern California in Big Sur, and from there, we drove down to San Diego to visit our great friend Katie, who's actually made a couple of appearances on our channel, from Vietnam to the Grand Tetons. And from there, we made a little bit of a detour to Sedona to meet up with Jess's little brother. And then we drove 5.5 hours to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where we are now. And we still have roughly 24 hours of driving until we make it to Jacksonville, Florida, where our road trip officially ends. We don't have many stops planned between here and Jacksonville, but I am really excited because for part of today's drive, we're actually going to get to drive some of the historic Route 66.
Route 66 was one of the original highways in the United States. It was established in the 1920s and became one of the most famous roads in the country. It has since been largely replaced by the interstate system, but portions of the historic route still exist, and I can't imagine doing a cross-country U.S. road trip without at least seeing a part of this historic road.
So we're a little more than halfway to Amarillo at this point, and we've just been hopping on and off the interstate and driving through several of the old towns. We just went through Tucumcari, and it had everything that comes to mind when I think of Route 66. The old motels, the classic 50s cars, and abandoned service stations. It really had it all, and now we're driving out of town on the old historic Route 66. It's just following right along Highway 40, and it's obviously a little bit slower, but we had to drive at least for a little bit on the historic Route 66. Well, the paved road has ended. We're still on Route 66, which is now a dirt road. Now it's a lot slower than the interstate. Well, we just passed the halfway point on Route 66 here in Adrian, Texas. We've got about 50 miles to go to Amarillo, where we're going to be staying tonight, but we still have a long way to go before we're done on this road trip.
We are back on the road. We have around 11 hours of driving today. We just turned off the old Route 66 and we'll spend the majority of today crossing through Texas.
So we've obviously got a lot of time in the car today. So we've just been reminiscing about the past 4 months. It went by so fast. So it's been nice to look back and think about all the things we were able to see and do. We made it.
go!
Can't help but feel like I'm walking on the surface of a different planet right now.
Nothing but potatoes in Idaho. Secret's out. Let's go! We gotta go!
How does it get any better? Big hug.
This is so cool. We have this whole place to ourselves. Winter has officially arrived in Yosemite Valley. We've been chatting about our favorite things, and it really is so hard to choose. But if I had to say what my one favorite single day was in the past 133 days at this point, I would say it has to be the day that it snowed in Yosemite. We had just spent 2 amazing days in the park, and we knew that there was some snow coming in, and we really wanted to see Yosemite covered in snow. When we entered the park, I mean, really, you couldn't see very much. It was basically like whiteout snow. We just hung out in the valley all day. The snow came and went, and by the afternoon, the weather had cleared, and the entire valley was covered in a blanket of snow. It was absolutely magical. It really was such a special day. But if I had to pick my favorite overall experience, that would go to the enchantments in Washington. We felt so lucky to get a permit to go backcountry camping there for 5 days.
It was a 21-mile hike that we spread out over 5 days, most of which in a very short distance. I mean, we would go maybe just a couple miles from one place to the next and see lake after lake with these incredible yellow larch trees. It really was like a fairy tale.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah.
So I would definitely agree on overall experience, the Enchantments through hike takes the cake. But for me, my favorite single individual day has to be when we went out to San Juan Island. We got there before the sun even came up and just went out to watch the sunrise, and a whole pod of orcas went by right next to the coast. So unexpected.
Amazing.
I mean, the sunrise alone was beautiful, but to have that was just unbelievable. And that was before our planned whale watching tour, where we got to see another pod of orcas and followed them for over an hour at least until they went into Canadian waters. And then we just explored the island the rest of the day. That definitely had to be my favorite day, individual day for sure.
Our trip certainly didn't go as we had planned out in the beginning. We initially had thought we would spend 5 to 6 weeks in California, and we spent 1 week there. We spent way more time in Washington than expected.
Yeah, we didn't even think we were going to go to Idaho, and that ended up being one of our favorite places.
Idaho definitely was my biggest surprise over the past 4 months. The entire time we were there, we called it a sneaky cool state, and I stand by that. Between all the hot springs and the Sawtooth Mountains, Idaho has so much to offer, and we hardly even scratched the surface. We always knew there's so much to see in the U.S., but this road trip has shown us parts of this country that we never thought we would get to experience, and in some cases, places that we didn't even know existed.
And now we get to round it out by going coast to coast from the Pacific Ocean in San Diego all the way to the Atlantic Ocean in Florida, and we're more than halfway there here in the plains of Texas.
23,000 miles. We have put some miles on her. I think we started somewhere around 24,000.
We have made it to Jacksonville, Florida. We're here in Atlantic Beach to close out our road trip right. We jumped in the Pacific Ocean when we were in San Diego before heading east, so now it's time to jump in the Atlantic. It's definitely getting dark and it might be raining, but here goes nothing. The Atlantic Ocean is a lot warmer than the Pacific.
It has truly been an incredible 4-month adventure here in the States. We're honestly not sure what's next for us after the holidays. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's not to get too attached to any one specific plan, but it is certainly our goal to travel internationally again in 2021, so stay tuned.